It's 7 minutes past 12 on I lose track of what day it is. A Wednesday lunchtime.
Yeah.
Bright, beautiful day outside, but probably about 3 degrees. So deceptively cold. I'm here with Jared Korinko, product manager from Explore, friend of crew and friend of ours as well. Mate, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no worries. Happy to be here.
So, mate, we've known each other for I think 8 or 9 months, and I think the bit of the backstory for people watching this. Obviously, our business recruits in the product and SaaS space, and we were introduced by our partners in the US, Dom and her team. You were moving from the US to Melbourne. We got chatting. I think we set up a couple of interviews with you, and we ended up giving you the role at Explore, where you're working now. SaaS product in the childcare sort of space, doing some interesting stuff. But I think, out of this call, I was really interested to dig into just a bit of stuff around your personal portfolio. Because some of the discussions I've been having elsewhere around the difference between having a resume that maybe lists tasks as opposed to talking about achievements and what you've done, and a portfolio being sort of a natural extension from that. And yours is particularly cool and insightful, and I think does a great job in sort of conveying who you are, what you're all about. And for viewers of this, I'll put the link of the URL in the comments here so people can have a look. And mate, thanks for letting us share that. But I think I was interested, first of all, what made you put a portfolio of that depth together?
Yeah, so throughout my winding career, I've touched on a lot of different parts of several businesses I've worked for. I've been a founder. So the conventional sort of resume, just having the CV, I didn't think did a good enough job in explaining some of the decisions that I made as leadership, and being in the design space as well. As I said, I flip-flop from design to product to founder. So I needed a versatile medium in which to convey the stuff that I did. And part of that medium needed to be graphical as well. So, those were the foundations for my decision. Getting it to the point where it was today has been an evolutionary process. I've had multiple versions of it. But, even in the early versions, it was still helpful for recruiters, and if I was not going through a recruiter, just doing a direct hire, it was useful for that person to also see it as well. I think the state that it's in now, I'm really happy with. It's really simple and easy to use, and it sort of speaks to, I hope, my design sense, and as I said, it was evolutionary. It wasn't just slap it up and that's that. But I think what's really important for people listening to understand is that it should be iterative. It should be like a working document that you can add to. And the best insights, if you go to my portfolio and you look, you're going to realize that the best insights and the best writing that I did about my experiences were the most recent ones. And that's because I think Surf was around the time that I created this new version of my portfolio. And you see the write-up for Surf is excellent. It has, a deep dive of what I did, some of the decisions that I made, interactive prototypes. And the reason why that's better than the other ones, in my opinion, was because it was fresh in my mind. And I had all of those resources. So, never is too early to start. You should start on it now, even if it's just slapping it into a Word document and recording your thoughts. And that's very much what I'm doing at Explore. I don't see myself going to a different company or anything, but I do put down the insights for future interviews or future portfolio items, because it's almost like a journaling experience, right? And so that those journals will be useful for you later on when you talk about your role, even if it's for me, getting hired into another more senior role at Explore. It'll be so useful when I'm going through that process to reflect back on those decisions that I made and that I journaled about later on. So, even if you're not looking for a new gig, constantly be adding to this portfolio, whether it's a Word document or website, for the stuff you're working on, because when it's fresh in your mind, that's when the best stuff comes out. Otherwise, you're sort of just relying. It becomes dehumanized and sort of stale when you talk about stuff you've done years and years ago, because you've naturally moved on from that stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Cool, and I agree. And I think there's this thing as well that show don't tell, right? If you can show someone an interactive wireframe on why you made the decisions, and they're able to click through some screens and mock-ups and understand your decisioning, it tells them more about you and what you were thinking at the time. But it also then, I think, allows if you were interviewing in a couple of years' time, to as you grow as a product manager and the way you approach and think about problems changes, you could look at one of those old wireframes and say something along the lines of, God, that's how I thought about it then. But now if I was doing that, I'd probably think this, this, and this, which I think shows how you've evolved as a product manager, as a person. So I think show, don't tell is really important. I think good quality portfolios let you do that. And again, I think it's this thing of staying away from this really sort of boring traditional resume of just listing tasks, rather than talking about why we made decisions, what factors affected our decision making, best decisions we could based on this kind of data, and we went on with it, we iterated as we went. Cool. And obviously my feedback is slightly biased because we're friends now as well, but in terms of other feedback that you'd gotten from people who'd seen it, did that sort of affect sort of that iteration, that tweaking as you went?
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. I'm trying to think back to the different versions. A good tip would be to use a very designer and experience focused builder if you're going to be doing a website builder, because my first one was in, it was like a crappy WordPress one, and it loaded slow, and it just wasn't as good of an experience. So if your goal here is to use your CV and your resume as a tool to pull people in, to want to learn, to explore more, and to do that through your portfolio, then you don't want your resume to look really good and your portfolio to look like crap, because it's not telling the right story. So focus on it being a good experience. Obviously focus on the content. So I would recommend tools like Webflow. Squarespace is all right. Wix. Don't reinvent the wheel unless you're a coder, and specifically a web designer, and you want to show off maybe your gumption in web development and web design. Then do so and create your own. But for everyone else, I mean, there's no reason to spend time on pulling together a custom template or anything. There's, I want to say, tens of thousands of really, really nice templates for WordPress. If you're into that, I've moved on from WordPress, but there's people that know how to make it work quickly, and I just didn't want to screw around with that. So my main recommendation would be use Webflow, and pick a really nice portfolio template from there. There's ones that it literally take you, once you have the content, less than a day to drop in the information. So that would be one of my main pieces of feedback. And obviously the feedback that I received over the years about my WordPress one and whatever the hell I used before that, was to transition to more of a faster, design focused, and really easier to use. Like, it's so easy for me to publish new portfolio items in Webflow. It takes minutes. So just goes back to the reason why, even if you're not adding to your actual website, you still should be, have your career journal or whatever you want to call it, that you're constantly recording notes about. What I go back to when I do my weekly or monthly journaling is what I've been asked in interviews. And I'm sure the people here will know that product interviews generally follow the same template. You might do a case study. You might be asked about previous decisions or difficult decisions you had to make. So keep those interview questions in your mind as you go through your workday. And if you run into things that match up to that, catalog them. Use it as future ammunition if you need to. And it's just really great stuff to talk about in general as well. If you are one of those product managers or product people that are really vocal on LinkedIn or write your own blogs, you're going to need that ammunition, because if you just sit down and just try to write something without even in your mind having those experiences cataloged, you're probably going to come up with something that's not as good as real as stuff that happened as it happened. So that would be my advice. Catalog constantly.
Yeah, and I agree. And I remember saying years ago to people, once a quarter, just brain dump what you did. That quarter, just while it's fresh, into a Word doc, make it look pretty later. Tart it up later.
Exactly.
Sentences flow, but now we all have the ability to use things like Webflow, and there's so many free website builders out there, and you can make it look really good, and drag in images and interactive workflows and that sort of stuff to highlight. So I think that's a great idea. What would you change if you were going to go back and start again now, other than not use WordPress? You got a WordPress thing. Our site's in WordPress. I don't know why you hate it.
So I just thought of something actually in terms of the feedback. I'll come back to what I would change, but in terms of the feedback, something just popped into my mind that I think would be really useful for people listening. And that's that I don't think I told you this, but when I went into an interview and I had discovered that no one I was talking to in the interview had actually looked at my portfolio, I just remembered that. And I said, how much do they have invested in this position and in the person that they're looking to. And I found out after I got hired at Explore that everyone, like even the design team, had looked at it. And so that was a real, that now that experience is really locked into my brain, in that people that and companies that really care are going to be looking at your portfolio. So I'm not saying that if they don't, that should just cross them off your list, but I'm saying keep that in mind. And it certainly helped me move on from decisions that were made. Maybe they passed me up, or they said now's not the right time to hire. And I still found out they never looked at my portfolio, and I said, well, maybe they weren't really ever looking deeply. Maybe they had an internal person anyways or something. So yeah, that was useful. And in terms of what I'd change, let's see. I would, if you have the ability, I've done a lot of consulting work over the years as well, just because I, for some reason, hate sleep.
My cat.
It's important to get permission to share. So there are different degrees of permission that you can ask for. I have a password on some of my portfolio items. I think it's maybe just one. And that's because the client asked that I only share it, on a one-to-one basis. So that's what I do. People that receive my CV can get the password on the bottom of it, but I ask them not to share it, unless they're it's critical to the hiring process. And I've received clearance from that client to do that. So if you need to do that, make sure you don't get bitten in the ass later on for some legal issues or anything. But most of the people I've worked for, and certainly the companies that I've been a part of, even the ones that have been acquired, were fine with it. So it's as long as you stay away from sharing pending legal stuff or hard information like that, you should be fine. So I would say I had to go back and ask, and it was a lot more awkward than just saying, either putting in your contracting agreements that I have a personal portfolio, I'm going to share this information, or designs that I create. That doesn't mean it's not yours. You can rescind that, but it's much easier to bake into the introductory sort of contracting process when you are a contractor than to go back later and ask, because then the client could hem and haw about it, and I don't really want this information out there. So it just makes it a lot more difficult.
Yeah, great point for any contract staff looking. Beautiful. So, mate, look, I'm wary of your time. So I think the big takeaways are if you haven't got a portfolio now, just get started with something. Webflow is a tool that you'd recommend for using it. If you're going to be referencing past work that you've done, particularly if you're consulting, make sure you get permission so you're not facing any challenges later. And when you're interviewing, ask anyone who's interviewing, which part of my portfolio did you like the most? and see what they say.
Yeah, see how uncomfortable they get.
Yeah. But on that point, I think your experience of the whole team, finding out that the whole team had looked at your portfolio, that's giving them some insight into who this new guy is that's joining us. So I think from an onboarding perspective, it's a great thing to be able to do to share with a team that you're joining, and cross-functional teams that you're joining, and everyone's just suddenly got a little bit more comfort even before you've even started. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I have a fairly static portfolio. There's people that have portfolios that they write constantly on, and that would give them even more insight into how you make decisions, how you work, what you think of current events, things like that. So yeah, it's just really allowing your new company to get to know you even before you step in the door, which can be really, really helpful.
Yeah, fantastic. Beautiful. So, mate, I'll thank you again. I'll include the link to your portfolio in here. I'm sure if people wanted to ask you anything directly, you'll say, no, I'm too busy trying to roll out products. But I think the details are on your portfolio anyway. So I suppose if anyone's got any questions, they can hit you up personally. But, mate, thank you again. I'll let you get back to it. Really appreciate your time.
Beautiful.
Look forward to seeing you when all this craziness is over.
Thanks for having me, Simon. Have a good day.
We only live a couple of streets away from each other.
That's right. Yeah, that's true.
We could have done this in person.
Beers in person when everything is over. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you, mate. Take care.
See ya.
See you, buddy.